everyone. Welcome to the Monday night webinar. Thanks for tuning in this evening. We're going to be speaking about family quests and how this process of going on a family quest can help you integrate your experience at Open Sky. So to get started, my name's Kara Collins. I'm a family services therapist here at Open Sky, and a little bit about me. I've been working in wilderness since 2006 and came over to work with Open Sky at 2008. And I spent many years as a field guide, being out in the field with many students just like your children. And after many years of doing that, I was pretty inspired by the family work that I was doing and getting involved in here at Open Sky. So decided to pursue my degree in family therapy, and here I am. I have the opportunity to lead family quests as well as wellness weekends and graduations for Open Sky. I encourage you all as we move through the presentation tonight to send in your questions whenever you have them. I'm happy to stop and answer whatever questions you have. There'll also be time at the end. So send in your questions. Great. So I'll start off talking about a little bit about family and the family component of Open Sky. So I've worked at a couple different wilderness programs, and to me, and I think other people in the industry would agree, that Open Sky has one of the most comprehensive family programs that's out there in wilderness programs. And for us, why this is so important and such a value to the work that we do out in the field with your children and the students out there is really it helps create, when the family is involved, when you all as parents and extended family and siblings as well are involved in this process, we find that the kids and your families create longer lasting change over time. And this is something that's been shown to me time and time again after doing many, many family quests, and hope that maybe you will have the same experience. And so if we do the family quest process, one, to support you as a family and support your children in really solidifying the changes that they've been working on making out in the field and that you at home have been working on. It's almost like a trial run is how I like to think of it. Like they've been practicing, and now it's actually time to put what they've been learning into practice. So they've been talking the talk, and now it's time to walk the walk. So what is a family quest and what does it look like? We've designed a 3-day kind of solo experience for your family. So you will be, as parents, you will be joining your child out in the field, maybe at base camp, maybe at a site close to base camp, but you'll be sleeping under a tarp like your child has been sleeping. You will be eating the food. Your child will hopefully be cooking you food. They're really going to be, during this 3-day quest, your child is really going to lead the way out there. And part of the idea behind that is to give them a chance to just show off their skills, both their hard skills like cooking and fire making, and also the soft skills, so communication skills, validation, reflective listening, all sorts of those things, I feel statements, etc. So it's a time for you as a family to connect. It's also a time to do some good therapeutic work. And so that's one part of the experience of a family quest. And like I said, it's a time for everybody to come together after such a long time of being apart and really seeing and evaluating, one, how is it like to be together as a family again without being in crisis, without having such high emotional tension all the time, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, and what's it like to interact in a new way. And part of what is helpful in this experience is that you will have family quest facilitators. So I'm a family quest facilitator. We have a team of about 10 people, and our job out there with your family is really to support you in your process in all aspects. So logistically, let's say you have trouble sleeping on the ground, we can accommodate you with extra pads or a cot or an extra sleeping bag. If you have dietary issues, we can address that. We're also there to be what we call, and if you've attended a wellness weekend, you may have heard this term of being therapeutically rude. And what that means is basically the facilitators, we're going to jump in there as your family is maybe cooking dinner, or maybe your family is discussing a particular issue that from the past or maybe the current that's coming up on Quest. We're going to be in there helping you kind of identify, okay, how can we do this differently? Let's say maybe it's a moment of conflict, which is really common on a family quest. And I always like to say, I want conflict to happen, even though that may be anxiety producing to you, or think about like, oh gosh, we've just been through this like 8 to 12 week process and here we are in a fight again. To me, that's actually great because it gives us as facilitators something to work with. It's a growth edge that we can identify for your child and your family about, okay, let's stop, slow the process down. How can we do this differently? How can we say it differently? How can we hear it differently? How can we implement all the tools that your child especially has been learning, right? The mindfulness skills, I feel statements, validation, all these really helpful tools. How can we implement them in the moment with you, and also vice versa? How can you as a parent or somebody who's been involved in your child's life really implement the skills that you've learned? And at least usually 99% of the time, one of the facilitators will have a master's level degree out there. And then the other facilitator in the supporting role, we call them our family wellness counselors, is they usually have a lot of field experience, and they go through a pretty rigorous interview process to join the family services team. So that they have a lot of experience and they're walking out in a very informed way. I often think of my co-facilitator as exactly that, a co-facilitator, rather than, I'm above them. So you'll be in good hands out in the field. Your primary therapist, so the therapist that is in charge of your child's group and who you've been doing weekly phone calls with, is usually not the person to facilitate the quest. Part of that is generally they don't have time. They're super busy with their caseloads and managing their own work life and regular life in that so they generally don't have time. And so as facilitators, we will join the family phone call the week before the quest. And then we will also have an additional phone call with your family and whoever is participating in the quest. And we will then have a face-to-face meeting with you just before the start of the quest. And just to touch on it really quick, when do quests happen? So maybe you've heard already from your primary therapist that they are recommending that your family participate in a family quest coming up. And right now, the majority of the quests are happening Saturday, Sunday, and Monday before the graduation. It's happened in the past that another powerful time to do it is after you've attended a wellness weekend, going straight into a quest. So wellness weekend would be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then you could do a quest Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's really, I think most people would agree with me, it's more powerful to do the family quest towards the end of your child's stay, when they have done a lot of work, when the whole family unit has done a lot of work and you're preparing to come back together. So that's where we are right now with the family quest, usually scheduling, like I said, before graduation or just after wellness weekend. And that'll be really, you'll discuss it with your primary therapist about when they recommend that happening. I also realize schedules and coordinating other members of your family is also part of the puzzle and work and all these other things. You guys are, as parents, juggling many pieces, so thank you for all that you do and your ability to tune into webinars and participate in this process. It really means a lot. So that is our job as facilitators, coming out to the field, really working with your family one-on-one, really intimately and closely to really help you guys achieve whatever you want to achieve. You know, we get a thorough kind of rundown of what your family's been working on, what your child's struggles are, what their successes have been, the strengths of your family, where your family may need some help. And then we also talk to you as parents or as grandparents, whoever you are coming out to the field. What do you want from this time together? What are your goals? What are your concerns? What are your hopes? What are your fears? And we also get a chance to check in with your student as well, and we hear from the therapist about how your child is feeling about the quest. And really, the Family Quest experience is made for your family. In a little bit, we'll go over what an average day looks like, but depending on what's going on, it could look a myriad of different ways. So, role of the facilitators. Oh, we have a question. VM from Team G asked, do siblings participate and how young? So if you can read my mind, right, there we are. Here we go. You read my mind and the presentation very well. So who can attend? My general recommendation would be that people who can attend are people who have been closely involved with your child's process at Open Sky. Right, it wouldn't really make sense for Aunt Sally, who's maybe read one letter, to come out and do the Family Quest process. Most likely it's parents or guardians, grandparents, and extended family if they happen to be who is the primary caretakers for the child, siblings over 12, and we can also accommodate single parent families and maybe divorced or blended families. So siblings over 12, that stands for any Open Sky event, graduation, wellness weekend, or Family Quest. We ask that your younger children at least be over 12, and that's, to my understanding, mostly for liability reasons. We have another question. Martha from Wisconsin asked, how many are on the webinar? We have 14 attenders at the webinar right now. And has anyone else been on the quest yet, like me? So I'm assuming, Martha, you have been on the quest, if I'm reading your question right. And I'm not sure if anybody else has been on a quest. Feel free to write in and say yes or no. Yeah. So if you're tuning in for the first time, we are talking about Family Quests. Martha says, yes, she has been on a Family Quest and it was great. Thanks, Martha. Glad you can support the experience and that you had a good experience out there. Excellent. And another family has been on a Family Quest. Great. To address the single parent and blended family, I'm sure some of you, if you are divorced or separated, you can, what does that look like? And it can look a number of different ways, going back to that this Family Quest is really a customizable experience for your family. So what I've seen happen before is sometimes a mom and a dad or two partners who are divorced or separated, they actually come out on a quest together. I realize this may sound horrifying to some of you. It may seem really doable to some of you. Your primary therapist will be the one to talk to and kind of evaluate how the quest is going to look. But at times, divorced parents do come out on the quest at the same time. And what we might do is give, your child and mom, they would have an afternoon or a day while dad goes on solo, which means spending some time by himself in the wilderness. And then later that day or the next day, dad would get some one-on-one time with the child, and then mom would have some solo time. And you don't necessarily have to sleep in the same tarp together. You may choose to eat meals and cook meals together. And one advantage of this is I come from a, divorced family as well, is that sometimes parents being able to put aside their own kind of agenda and their own issues with each other and really show up for your child can mean a lot. It can also mean a lot in that you're showing up as a single unit, even though you are divorced or separated, to really show up as one solid co-parenting unit. It's really common for kids who come from divorced families to be able to split and manipulate their parents. I know I took advantage of that as a teenager. And so when the two of you are able to show up and be together, it doesn't have to be together at every moment, but it really can really solidify again that, hey, we're your parents, this is what's happening, we're here together for you. It can really mean the world to some of your children out there and be like, wow, mom and dad have made some changes. This is really cool. I'm not alone. And that's also part of the Family Quest experience is you get to see all the changes your child has made and they get to see some of the changes that you have made as well. And it's a really touching experience at times. We have another comment from a mom here. She says her Family Quest was amazing, and even though my child graduated 15 months ago and is doing really well, we would love to do another quest. Some of those old dynamics when the whole family gets together. I can't see the whole comment here, but I'm assuming some of those old patterns come up when the whole family gets together. And I imagine with the holidays coming up that may be a concern. And Lynn, I will get back to your question at the end. We do have, in addition to students who are currently enrolled in the program and families that are currently enrolled in the program doing Family Quests, we also have alumni quests available, whether that looks like your student just coming back and doing kind of a student quest experience, which would be, your child and a couple guides, or the whole family coming back to do another Family Quest. Those opportunities are available. Great. Keep sending in your questions. It's great to have them. So another question is my family ready? How do you know if your family is ready? And I'd say the biggest factor for this is, are you honest and open, willing, able, and do you feel ready to engage with your child in a really similar process that they've been living and breathing in the last 2 to 3 months? A big part of the Family Quest is coming together as a family and saying, this is my piece. As a child, I know I messed up. These are my issues. This is what I'm working on. And for you as a parent to show up to say, this opportunity, sending you to Open Sky has been really powerful for me. I've been doing some work and looking at my own process, and this is something I'm working on. These are some of the challenges that I struggle with. Being willing to show up and be honest and open to your child about what are you working on and what do you want to see change for yourself, for your child, and for your family as a whole. And are you willing to look at some of those patterns that show up in your family and what's your part in that? And by no means do I mean to inflict guilt or shame. I know many of you parents already struggle with a lot of that. That's not really the point, is to say like you have a role and it's your fault. It's nobody's fault. As a family, we all contribute to the dynamics and the issues that come up. And so I guess my hope is that maybe this webinar, or maybe you're already there, that as much as this is an opportunity for your child to change, it's an opportunity for you to change as well, to get curious, to get interested in like, hey, what is my role? And not in a guilty or shaming way, but more of a curiosity. And also discussing with your primary therapist. Again, they'll really be the ones to tell you, is your child ready? Is your child too resentful about being sent to Open Sky that's all they're going to talk about on the Family Quest? And, that's not really a good use of your time or your money. So something to think about as well. How have the letters been going? And if things haven't been going too well with your child, or things have, been rocky or bumpy, I encourage you to remember that so much can change in a week out there for your child and for you. So that maybe right now on week 3, you can't imagine doing a family quest. You maybe think that would be a disaster, but maybe at week 8, it's looking like, oh yeah, this could be a really cool opportunity for your family. So keeping that in mind and keeping the dialogue open with your primary therapist about when is a good time and when are people ready and what are some things, getting some guidance about what to talk about on Family Quest. I have a question from Martha here. What percentage of the families do a Family Quest? I'm not sure off the top of my head what the percentage is, but I know, I think back in even just a year or 2 ago, there were only about, I think like 50 quests happening in a year, and now it's well over 100 or even more. So I'd say at least 50%, and I'm making that estimate on the lower end of things, probably even more, a higher percentage of our family are doing quests, but I'd say between 50 and 65% of our families are doing quests right now. Yeah, great. So what are some benefits of doing a family quest? And I'm going to correct myself here where it says individual therapy versus family therapy. What that should really say is linear therapy versus systemic therapy. And at the beginning, I spoke about, one of the hopes that we have with your involvement in this process with your child is that you create a long-lasting change. And in kind of therapeutic terms, we state that as first-order change versus second-order change. And I'll give you all a simple example that hopefully I'm sure you'll be able to get. And then later on in the presentation, I'll give an actual example from the field and something that I've experienced on a firsthand basis of how this played out in the work that we do on Family Quest. So first-order change, let's say you get a cold, you go to the doctor, you have a sinus infection, maybe a cough, maybe a runny nose, they give you some antibiotics. You go home, and then 10 days later, after the antibiotics are done, you still don't feel good, right? You have a temporary relief of your symptoms of that runny nose, of the pain in your sinuses, temporary relief of the symptoms of the cough, but really what's going on hasn't really been addressed. So that would be an example of first-order change. You're sick. Your doctor gives you some medicine to treat your symptoms, but then a little while later, you're still feeling crummy. So first order change, really just looking at the symptom, and really the change is usually temporary and short term. An example of this for your child could be that, your child is smoking pot. Well, that is an issue, but it's probably just a symptom of something deeper that's going on for them. And a second order change, you go back to the doctor, you say, I'm still feeling crummy. Your doctor says, okay, well, let's talk about your symptoms, but let's also talk about, okay, what's happening at work? What's happening with your family? How are you feeling emotionally? What are you doing to take care of yourself? And all of a sudden the bigger picture is coming in and you're like, okay, wow, I'm working 70 hours a week. I'm not getting to the gym as much as I used to. I'm having a lot of stress in my marriage, whatever it may be. All these things come together, all these symptoms come together to say, wow, there's something deeper going on here that may be a reflection of why I'm sick, why I have this illness coming up in my body. May be a reflection of something deeper that's happening for me. And so there could be a myriad of number of reasons why your child is showing symptoms, whether that's cutting or an eating disorder or depression or internet addiction, substance abuse, whatever it is. That's getting to that deeper cause, that deeper root of the problem, and exploring that is really what creates the second order change. And a second order change is basically a change in meaning, a change in understanding, a change in your role and the rules that operate around that behavior. And so that's really how we work, and I'd say everybody works here at Open Sky, is how do we get to those deeper places so that longer lasting change can occur within yourself as an individual within your child, with your child individually, but also on a family systemic level. And that is really where the hands-on work for the Family Quest comes in getting to sit face to face, being one-on-one, really hashing through, okay, this is a pattern in our family, or this event occurred. How is this a deeper reflection of a pattern that exists within the family? And how do we move forward? How do we make changes? So hopefully that's making sense. First order change, second order change. And that's really a benefit of this Family Quest process, is getting into some of that deeper work within the family to create longer lasting change. Also, a way to think about it is if you have been to Wellness Weekend, or maybe watched the webinar on stages of change, there's 2 stages that towards the end of your child's time at Open Sky, they're kind of fluctuating between preparation, which is making the plan to change, and action, which is putting that plan into action, basically. And hardly ever are students fully into the action stage by the time they leave Open Sky. That kind of dance between preparation and action, and really solidifying the action of the changes they want to make. So saying, I don't want to smoke pot anymore, and actually following through with that is something that they'll often do either at home or at aftercare. So your family as well is in this preparation and action phase. You've made a plan. Okay, when I really want to change the amount of anxiety that I have when we get into conflict. That's my plan, and I have a plan how to do that. I'm going to practice breathing. I'm going to have a mindfulness practice. Maybe I'm going to ask for a timeout in the moment when we're in the conflict. That's all good and well, but until you really test that plan, it's hard to know whether it's going to work and whether it's actually realistic for you to do. So the Family Quest is a great opportunity and environment. It's your family is going to be super supported and held in making and testing your plans, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. Again, the environment out there, nature itself lends to an environment that's very slow. So at home, when you've got a million things going on and then you get in a fight with your child, it's really hard to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do here, or act in a way that you want to act instead of reacting to your child. The wilderness provides this beautiful venue for really slowing down, connecting at a heart level, really stripping away any other distractions that we have in our everyday lives, really bringing the family together and having a really powerful exchange. Great. Some other benefits of doing a Family Quest, that oftentimes your children are going to go on to an aftercare program. So this gives you 3 more days of some really quality time with them out in the field. It means a lot to your kids that you're willing to come out, to sleep on the ground, to participate and live like they have been living. It means a lot to them. So that's another benefit, is really rebuilding that relationship and rebuilding trust with your child. And again, the experiences really fit to meet your family. We have another question in here from Team A. Will we get some of the same experiences during graduation as in graduation? My guess is that maybe you meant, will you get some of the same experiences at graduation that you will at Family Quest? You will, graduation, you will also sleep on the ground. It's one night, and you do get a little bit of process time. So in the afternoon, so you'll be sharing some I feel statements and kind of talking about whatever really needs to come up. And sometimes that's supported by a graduation staff, but sometimes not. And so one benefit of the Family Quest is that you get a lot of time, pretty much 3 whole days, to talk about the past, the present, and the future, addressing some of these bigger goals. And it really sets up the family well for your transition to aftercare, if that's where you're going, or to home. So hopefully that answers your questions, CP. Okay, so what does a typical day look like on a Family Quest? So we'll start, so you will wake up in the morning. I'll give you the typical day 2 of a family quest. So we'll wake you all up. You'll be sleeping under a shelter. Staff, the facilitators will come over, say good morning, take your time, come on over when you're ready. Usually do a yoga and meditation practice. So something that your child is doing, 5 out of 7 days a week out in the field. Eat some breakfast, and then usually we'll dive right into some sort of therapeutic process. I'm going to go over some assignments that you will be given before Family Quest in just a moment, but those assignments will really be the content for what we will discuss on Family Quest. So we'll start a therapeutic group, and you're going to be learning all sorts of open sky culture when you're out there on Family Quest or in graduation, about how we at Open Sky open and close groups, how in your child's particular group, whether it's Team A or Team D or Team C, how they do it in their own group, because every group is a little different. So we'll go into some therapeutic group. We'll take a break for lunch, maybe go for a hike in the afternoon. A lot of parents have concerns about carrying a heavy backpack. You are more than welcome to carry your child's backpack if you want that experience, but we do not make you tromp around the desert or the woods with a giant backpack. So we'll be taking a short day hike, maybe to, now that we are in our desert course area, maybe to see some ruins or just a nice overlook somewhere in the field area. And then we'll probably do another therapeutic group depending on what's going on. Maybe we'll talk about the transition to aftercare. Maybe we'll talk about the home contract. Maybe we'll talk about your child's plan on staying clean, and then over the next 3 to 4 days while you're transitioning from Open Sky to the next program. There's lots of topics to cover on Family Quests. And then you will maybe participate or watch your child or help your child make a fire with his or her bow drill set, eat dinner, and then most likely have some solo time as a family to hang out in the evening, just to catch up and be silly and do whatever your family likes to do together. So that's a typical day. It can be a lot. Your child has developed a lot of resiliency and tolerance for talking about their emotions throughout the day, all day, every day. Everything is a reflection of, we hold up the mirror all the time. Okay, this conflict is arising. This behavior is arising. What's going on for you? Check in. Tell us what's going on. Make an I feel statement. We'll be doing a similar, there'll be a similar dynamic happening within the Family Quest. You may be bow drilling and your child gets frustrated, and we're going to ask them to check in, or maybe you get frustrated, we'll ask you to check in. So you'll be, it's a nice balance between maybe a more intensive therapeutic and a more casual, just giving your family space to hang out together without us always having to be around. Great. Typical day. I spoke to some of these before, but some of the common topics and goals we address on Family Quest are discussing the transition to aftercare or home contract. Is your child going to be able to call their girlfriend or boyfriend? Do they get to use their computer or laptop? These are all things to decide, and you'll get guidance from your primary therapist as well as guidance from us as Family Quest facilitators on what kind of ground rules and boundaries to have about that transition. Or maybe you're discussing the home contract. I've done a lot of quests around grief, grief about not going home, grief about the loss of a family member, grief about, your family not being what you wanted it to be in the last few years or months. It can be about addressing substance abuse and your child's plan for preventing relapse. It can also be a great time for reconnection and healing, talking about the past. I think some parents have a lot of hesitation, like, oh gosh, we're going to go there. Like, haven't we already been there? But there's something else, something bigger that happens when you are able to address it face to face with your child. And it's helpful that you've addressed it before, because some of that charge, some of that emotional experience that may have been attached to the past and whatever events happened in the past, a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, now that you've addressed them in letters, it's easier to address them face to face because it's out in the open, and there's just less energy around it. There'll also be time for family storytelling. So that could be in a therapeutic way, saying, wow, like, I didn't know that you were struggling so much with making friends in high school. This is how it was for me. I also really struggled making friends in high school. Or remember the time that we went on this awesome vacation. It's both talking about the challenges and what's been hard and where the work needs to be, and also talking about what are the strengths of your family? What are the times where you felt connected? What are the times that you felt joyous being in your family? It may have been a long time since you felt that way, but I know that there are times that have happened. Also, rewriting the family story, so that ties into the reconnection and healing. Also, conflict resolution and skill building again. Really taking time and using the I feel statements and the other tools, 4 lines, feelings checks, validation, again, all those tools that you're learning about and that your child is becoming an expert at out in the field. Great. I'm going to take a pause here, take a drink. So some of the biggest feedback I get from parents on our evaluations after Family Quest is that they could have been more prepared. And I think there's a lot on our end that we can do, including this webinar, to help prepare you for going into this Family Quest experience if you choose to do one. But there's also, you can never be fully prepared for an experience you've never had. And when I was thinking about this while I was putting the presentation together, it's similar to your child, especially if you have an adult child and they maybe had a heads up about coming to Wilderness and looking at the website and checking out Open Sky. They may have one idea in their head, but really when they get there, they're kind of blown away about, like, wow, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be, or this isn't what my escorts or my parents told me it was going to be. And part of that's so we can just get your children here. And part of that is it's really hard to explain. It's hard to explain what it's like to sleep under a tarp in the desert. It's really hard to explain what it's like to sit across from your child and speak to them in a really open and candid way about your feelings and about what's going on for you, and to feel heard in that for both your child and for you. So I think there is naturally going to be some anxiety, maybe some fear, some concern, maybe some excitement, hopefully, about what it's going to be like to reconnect with your child. And your child is feeling that as well. So again, going back to the parallel process, that, all these emotions that are coming up for you are more than likely coming up for your child. So another good way to prepare for this quest is to take care of yourself. I worked with a mom a couple weeks ago who came out for a quest with her daughter, and she had recently lost one of her parents. She forgot her ADHD medication, and she had recently stopped smoking cigarettes. It was a lot of change for her. And although it was potentially positive change, there was just a lot going on for this parent, and I noticed that she was pretty distracted and needed a lot of caretaking, and understandably, and she was exhausted. She wasn't as able or willing to really dive in there and meet her daughter than maybe she would have been a couple weeks down the road. And with that family, the child was going home, and so oftentimes if you're making the choice to bring your child home, which is a perfectly good choice, it's often really helpful to participate in the Family Quest to have some support about, okay, we're going home, things are going to go right, it's really easy for things to go right back to where they were. How are we going to make this work? How are we going to do something different when we go home? I'd also recommend, again, looking at what is my role, taking some time to think about, okay, what has my role been in all of this? What are the changes I'm working on? And also managing your emotions. That's a really important skill to be able to model for your child. So Family Services Director and our Clinical Director, Dr. Tony Issenman, did a great presentation and webinar on differentiation. So encourage you to watch that one as well. Another great way to prepare is to attend a wellness weekend. Wellness weekend, if you don't know what that is already, is a parallel experience to what your child is going through out in the field. So you'll be hanging out in Durango for 3 days. You won't be sleeping outside during wellness weekend. We'll serve you healthy food and do some yoga and meditation and mindfulness practices with you. We'll do some psychoeducation around grief and around stages of change, and also give you an opportunity to share in a small group with other parents about what has your experience been. It's really time for you to take some time out of your life and of your work and of your family and to take care of yourself for the weekend. And so also you'll be learning things like the 4 lines feelings check, the 3-fold breath, the I feel statement, validation, which are all very essential tools to Open Sky and to what your child is learning out in the field. So Wellness Weekend is a great preparation. Also practicing your skills, validation, I feel statements, assertive communication. The more you all as parents can practice those skills and have them be, as fluid as they can. I realize it's not always easy. You're not in the same kind of environment as your child is in. So that's not really the expectation we have, but for you to familiarize yourself, okay, like, what's the I feel statement all about? Okay, I know I need to say I feel and then say an emotion. That's a great start. And to practice that with your partner, with your other children. And I would really stress the validation piece, practicing that. It goes such a long way with your child. If you learn about nothing else during your time here at Open Sky and involved with us, validation is one skill that I hope that you walk away with. Great. Martha has another question. My 19-year-old son helped model for my behavior and responses. I think he felt stronger being in the teacher role. Absolutely. Martha brings up a good point that out on Family Quest, your children really are the experts. And they're going to be able to call you out on some of your stuff if you're not doing it already, which can be a really interesting and kind of, just an interesting experience to navigate out there. So your children will be your teachers, and that's really empowering for them to have a positive role in the family, to show up for you, to be able to demonstrate these skills that they've learned and feel confident about them is really a wonderful experience for them. Great. So assignments. So when you agree to do a Family Quest, when you sign up, when you figure out your dates, when you figure out your travel arrangements, our wonderful Family Services Coordinator, Tanya, will send you a packet of information. It'll outline a list of gear. It'll outline what you need to do to get ready. It'll also have some assignments in there for you. So the biggest assignment that we use on Family Quest is the 4 R's assignments. And 4 R's stand for resentments, respects, requests, and respects. Oh, I have respects in there twice. So it's resentments, regrets, requests, and respects. So that's a mistake. I'll correct that later. So you'll receive this assignment and you'll receive some guidance from your primary therapist as well. But just to go over some important aspects of this assignment right now is you want to use specific examples for each R and to think of 2 to 4 examples for each R. And then in your examples, so let's say I feel resentful when you invite your friends over and things get stolen out of my bedroom. So that would be an example of an R. And then thinking about the underlying patterns in the example. So what is the underlying, basically it could be a pattern of disrespect. It could be a pattern of lying. It could be a pattern of feeling unsafe in your own home. And so I'll give you an example here about the 4 R's assignment and how we can take it not from just a laundry list of the things that you're feeling or a laundry list of things that your child did in the past, but to a really powerful experience that can help you move forward. So I'll give you that example now, and I'm gonna tie it back into the first order change and second order change. And we have one question or one comment here. It says, even 15 months later, my daughter continues to call us out on some of our behavior. It's a beautiful thing. Lynn, I'm glad you think it's a beautiful thing, and I think that's great as well that she's continuing to show up as a leader in your household. That's awesome. So I worked with a student a couple months ago, and the student had some typical issues that we deal with here at Open Sky, or that we see at Open Sky from your children. He was smoking a lot of pot, had a lack of motivation, was about to turn 18, had never had a job, wasn't really doing well in school, just kind of overall kind of typical failure to launch kind of situation. And this is about halfway through the quest, and it's getting dark outside, and it's mom, dad, and the student's sister, and then the student. And dad is sharing some respects, and he shares something along the lines of, son, I respect you for finishing Open Sky and for your athletic ability, and dad continued to share, I was never athletic and I always wanted to be, and I really respect that in you. And maybe to you and to me at the moment, I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, he's acknowledging some things, and I could see how that could be meaningful to his son. And I asked his son to reflect what his dad said. So he says, Dad, I hear that you think that you respect me for finishing Open Sky and respect my athletic talent. And after the student reflected, I asked him, so how is what your dad said sitting with you? And he says, I'm frustrated. And his dad quickly jumps in and is like, oh, why are you frustrated? Like, I'm trying to be nice. And I thought that was a good thing to say. Like, why are you upset with me? And his son the more dad goes on, the son begins to tear up. And so I have dad stop and check in with the student. I'm like, what's going on for you right now? And basically the son was able to communicate, I feel like those are really superficial things that you're saying, Dad. And this time, so, the son's experience was like, wow, that's pretty superficial. And this was a reflection of a deeper dynamic that was happening between father and son. So the father and son had more of a friendship, bro kind of relationship rather than a father-son relationship. And one of the things that the student really struggled with was being seen for something other than just a pothead, and being feeling like he had worth and value in who he was, and that other people could see that. And so just in this simple example of sharing and respect, this huge conversation came up of like, wow, Dad, I don't feel like you see me as a human being, as something other than your bro. I want more than that from you. And it was a reflection for Dad of like, wow, I had no idea that was going on, and I want a deeper connection with you as well. And really that it was hard for the father really to connect and say some deep and meaningful things to his son. He was able to do it with some coaching, but in the moment he was so concerned about upsetting his son, or that his son was frustrated with him, because normally the relationship was everything was cool, and the son could do whatever he wanted and it was fine. But it was actually really hard for Dad to connect and to tap in on a heart level to, wow, what do I see in my son that I really respect and admire, other than what the son perceived as these surface levels. So through that conversation of the respects came this really beautiful deeper understanding of one another, which also created a deeper connection between father and son, and actually illuminated that, like, wow, we both tend to stay on the surface and have this friendship relationship, but what we both really want and need is a deeper father-son connection. And to be able to talk to each other about some hard stuff and share our emotions in the family. And in turn, the sister, chimes in and says, like, wow, This is really powerful for me to witness. Now I know why, like, I never cry in front of my friends, or I never, like, I always put on this happy face, because that was kind of what was kind of the underlying message in the family, is that if you're not okay, like, go to your room and cry, kind of thing. So it's just an example of kind of those second order changes, and really what this assignment, the 4 R's assignment, is looking for and asking you to do. And that's also a job of your facilitators, is to help pull out these threads of, like, okay, how can we go deeper? What is this example that you say that you're resentful of, or that you feel regret about? What is the deeper process? How does this tie into the deeper family experience and the deeper family patterns that your family wants to change in order to move forward? And you'll also have an assignment to do some I feel statements, which will most likely be shared at graduation. It's hard to believe, but the 4 R's actually takes us pretty much through the entire quest. It's enough kind of meaty material to discuss that it takes 3 days. So I feel statement assignment, you'll ask to say 1 or 2 positive I feel statements, 1 or 2 constructive, and then 1 or 2 that are hard to say. And again, most likely those will be done at graduation. And it's okay if the I feel statements and the 4 R's, if some of them overlap in terms of content, in terms of examples that you use, that's no problem. Great. What to expect? And I touched on this earlier, but it's really common for people to feel, or for parents to feel, anxious and scared and worried, and I hear a lot of, like, I have no idea what it's going to be like to see my son or my daughter. And then I hear when they get into the field and that initial reunion moment happens, it's like, oh, this is my child. Like, this is my son, this is my daughter. It's just been a long time, and look how awesome they look how bright their eyes are shining, look how tall they're standing, look how just like in their body and in themselves that they look compared to seeing them 2 months ago. So it's normal to feel anxious. Your child will be definitely feeling the same way. It's oftentimes, so you'll meet your facilitators in the morning, just parents and facilitators, and we'll have about an hour to check in, and then as a facilitator, I call the field and say, hey, we're on our way. How's the student doing? And 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, this child is feeling anxious and worried, but also excited. And that's the same thing I just heard from the parents. So sometimes it's helpful to know that somebody else is feeling the same way that you are. And know that challenges challenges on the quest are expected. It's not supposed to be all rainbows and happy, although it's always nice to see families connecting over the fire or hearing laughter from the shelter. That's always a really sweet moment. But knowing that these changes are really hard to make, especially face to face. I'm sure that you all have experienced this, but I know when I go home for the holidays, I suddenly turn into a 17-year-old again, and I'm feeling really annoyed at my dad for telling a story, or I'm fighting with my sister, or whatever those old family patterns are. It's so common, and they're really hard to change. So don't be discouraged if you're seeing some old patterns come up, because it's pretty typical. Great. So if you are interested in doing a family quest, it is, we consider a family quest an additional service. So there is an additional fee for the 3-day quest. And if you are interested in participating in the quest and want more information, I'm going to guide you to express your interest to your primary therapist first and foremost. They will be the ones who have the most information about your child and where they're at, and the best sense of where your family is at, and the appropriateness level for your family for a family quest. You can also write to your child about your interests, saying, hey, I just participated in this webinar and heard about family quest. It sounds kind of cool. Have you thought about doing one? What do you think about that? Having, us come out to the field and see you before graduation. And then last but not least, once you have expressed your interest and talk to your primary therapist, you will get some information and be contacted by Tanya, our family services coordinator, with additional information. So, any last questions, comments, feedback? We have about 4 more minutes. I will say, add one more thing here too, that it's often typical for, if you attend a wellness weekend, to meet one of the Family Quest facilitators. And so if you meet and connect with a facilitator, feel free to pass on to your primary therapist that you would, it's often nice to see another familiar face and, someone that may have heard your story and knows your child. So if you have a particular person that you felt connected with and that you would like to do your Family Quest, pass that information along to your primary therapist and or to Tanya. I know that if I spend some time with a family and know that they're doing a Family Quest, I also often give that information to Tanya so she can link up the families and the facilitators. So if there's nothing else, no other questions, thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, we have a question. How long is graduation if you do both? Is it 4 nights? So the way it would work if you do a Family Quest into graduation is you would do a Family Quest Saturday, Sunday, and Monday until noon. You would be in the field. And then graduation would kind of take over at about noon on Monday as well. So you would stay another night for graduation. So graduation is Monday into Tuesday. So you would be in the field Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it would still only be 3 nights in the field because you roll right from Family Quest into the graduation process with about an hour break. We'd like to break it up a little bit. Can the quest be scheduled at another time post-graduation? Yes, this is another option for scheduling of a Family Quest. You could come out for graduation Monday, Tuesday, and then roll into a quest Tuesday afternoon through Thursday, if that is an option for you or something that would be helpful for you. And we have a family that's coming up for a quest over Thanksgiving. That will be really, really special. I love spending holidays in the field, so I hope that you have a great Thanksgiving quest, and maybe I'll see you out there. Another question, we did a Family Quest and then Mark stayed for 2 or 3 weeks and will graduate. Yep, so it happens less frequently, but sometimes when it's appropriate, and again, your primary therapist will decide that you'll come out and do a Family Quest at like week 6, week 7, and then your child will have a couple more weeks in the field and then attend graduation. So that's another option. Oftentimes that happens if you have a young adult student and you want to talk about aftercare or what their plans are. Sometimes that's a great way to do it as well. So, going once, going twice. Any more questions? I'm glad to hear it was helpful for some of you. Please, if you have questions, feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact our family services coordinator, Tanya. We have plenty more information for you if you're interested. So thank you again for tuning into the webinar this evening. Your participation in webinars and every part of this process is so valuable to your child and to your family. And if you will, please do not close your browser off after I close out the webinar here. There'll be a survey, a short 3-question survey that helps us kind of field questions and field topics that we can do for future webinars. So stay tuned for the survey. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.